Welcome to We're Gonna Run It with Joe Lisi and Terry Bowden.
You're listening to We're Gonna Run It.
What's your game plan?
Can they run, but will they run? If you want to run the ball, you got to give it to a guy that's a running back.
Gutless. We're gonna run it.
We're gonna play blue collar. Enjoy it. I said it. Have a little heart and have some stones.
We're gonna run it.
If you want to throw an RPO, you got to run first, pass second. That's why it's not called a PRO. It's an RPO. You got to start with a running game that puts people on their heel.
Take a look at my algo. His algo is used with all data from last year. You're so smart, you're stupid.
We're gonna run it.
And the people that believe that talking head are even stupider than what I thought. I said it.
If you want to run the ball, you got to give it to a guy that's a running back.
You got no shot to get back into the series. No shot. I said it. What's your game plan?
We're gonna run it.
We inch closer to week number 4.
To We're Gonna Run It with Joe Lisi and Terry.
Some technical difficulties there. As we inch closer, Coach, to week number 4 of the college football season, Joe Lisi, Terry Bowden breaking down all of the top 25 action from start to finish. We have a lot to get into. I don't want to say, Coach, marquee top 25 games, certainly not what we saw last week. But these games will shape conference odds. They'll shape the national championship picture. And for a team like Oklahoma, they have an opportunity to start 4-0, and their quarterback, John Mateer, potentially could be the Heisman frontrunner by the end of the weekend.
That's exactly right. And if you talk to people at Auburn, they feel like they've got the same thing. They've got a chance to go 4-0 and flip that program back to a positive program. Of course, the money, right now is on the quarterback and the team at Oklahoma and where they can go from there. But we're just now starting to get to the point where these teams that have played maybe one Power 4 team and several lower-level teams, we're getting to see them a couple of times against, and that's the case that we've got with that.
Yeah, absolutely. We got a lot of storylines to get to throughout the college football week. One is Miami, in fact, the best team in the nation? We saw the Hurricanes dominate basically as a 17.5-point home favorite over USF. That was a USF team that stepped up. They knocked off Boise State and they knocked off Florida in back-to-back weeks. It was a tough task to go on the road yet again and knock off the Hurricanes. But Carson Beck and the Hurricanes answered the bell. They win 37-point margin of victory, and this team is trending now to potentially be a top 5 caliber team at the end of the regular season. I know a lot of people have said this is the most complete team in the nation. I'm not buying that yet, but they're in the right direction and headed that way.
Absolutely, because I think at the beginning of the season, most people said, okay, are they going to be at the top of their conference? They're clearly 1-2 in the ACC. And I think now there's an honest approach that this team is maybe one of the top 5 in America. That's what they want to get to. And I think it's going to take a little bit more of the season, especially a team like Florida, that although they've lost a couple of games, they are still a very, very talented team. You can tell that by the line on this game, that no matter what you're ranked, they have good football players. But I think Miami is trending toward that. I've already got them pegged in my mind. Is they're on the leaderboard. They're at the top of the ACC, and they're distancing themselves right now from the other teams in my mind. We'll see further as the game goes along, but that was where I thought I might expect Clemson to do, but now I can see right now that Miami is that team that seems to be distancing itself, and you have to if you're going to be talked about in the same conversation as the top 3 or 4 teams in the country when it comes to who has the best chance of playing for a national championship.
You see right now the line for that matchup, Miami and Florida, courtesy of FanDuel. The show is sponsored by FanDuel. Great odds across the board, especially when it comes to the prop bets up on FanDuel Sportsbook. Nothing better when you look at it. But 7.5 right now in favor of the Hurricanes, Coach. This line last week for Florida on the road against LSU, it was 10.5 at one point when it opened. Right. They bet it down to 6.5 right before game time. DJ Lagway and the crew struggled a little bit. We'll dive into that game a little bit later in the show. But, you know, it is an opportunity for Florida to make a statement as well, right? You know, coming back-to-back road games, Miami now is the hot team in terms of the conversation. We just talked about it. A lot of people believe this is the most complete team,
Right.
offensive line and defensive line in the country. And Florida basically is playing with house money. Now, can they showcase that is a different story in South Beach on Saturday.
Well, and if you watch the LSU game last week, this boils down is how is DJ Lagway going to respond to that showing he had with 5 interceptions last week, and really one at the end of the game that was taken to the house for a touchdown that took it to a 2-score game. I mean, I looked at least three of those 5. He threw right into a crowd. He threw when any experienced quarterback would say, "There's no way am I going to attempt to make that completion." And I'm right now wondering, was his head in the game? What was going on in his mind? Because that's not what you would think you got to do as a quarterback at a place like Florida. Now, if that can be corrected and he takes that away, then Florida goes back to being a very, very solid team with a chance to beat people, although their chances of getting to the SEC championship and those things aren't there. They could still turn it around. But after watching Lagway throw the football against LSU and saying, "Man, you don't do that. If you've got any kind of common sense of quarterback," and the game was on the line. It was a tight ball game, and he kept throwing it up for grabs and throwing it up for grabs. And so I've got some concern there because you've got to understand the negative talk around Florida once they lost their second. They lost that game to South Florida. The negative talk that can move into the locker room. You've got to be careful because that affects mentally how your kids can play.
Absolutely. And we're going to break down all of the conferences on the show. Another big battle in the Big Ten is that Illinois-Indiana matchup. Kirk Cignetti now a 5.5-point home favorite over Brett Bielema and the Fighting Illini. We do have 2 special guests. Mark Malusis, who covers Rutgers here in the tri-state area, Channel 11 News, WFAN. He's going to join us. Rutgers is 3-0. And, you know, you look at the schedule right now for Rutgers. That is an opportunity for Rutgers to potentially make a statement. Mark will just be joining us in a couple of minutes. And then a little bit later in the hour, ESPN host out of Jackson, Mississippi, Jake Wimberly, that covers Mississippi State and Ole Miss. He'll join us as well. You know, Miss State is one of the most surprising teams in the SEC right now. Blake Shapen and the crew are 3-0. They have the opportunity to potentially be 4-0 or 5-0 before their schedule really kicks up a notch. We'll get Jake's thoughts about Mississippi State and where Lane Kiffin and the Rebels stand. But without further ado, I'll bring in my friend to the show. He's been here and joined us. Mark Malusis, Channel 11, WFAN, Rutgers. Mark, 3-0.
Yeah.
Could they be like the Vanderbilt of the Big Ten this year? Are we talking maybe, you know, that matchup against Oregon in October? You and I could go and they'll be undefeated?
I don't know. Maybe. Terry, Joe, great to be with you guys. Happy Wednesday night.
Mark.
And always great talking a little college football. And yeah, I mean, I think when you look at Rutgers and the 3-0 start, I think the thing that impresses you is their passing game. And Ethan Kaliakmanis has talked about it during the offseason that he wanted to improve his accuracy going into year 2 as the Scarlet Knights starting quarterback, and he has done that. And they've got playmakers at the wide receiver position. It'll be interesting to see if Ian Strong is available Friday night against Iowa. He didn't play against Norfolk State. They didn't need him. KJ Duff, they were teammates in high school, Strong and Duff. A transfer portal when you're looking at DT Sheffield, number 0. He's been a big-time playmaker as well. He's got speed. But injuries reared their ugly head defensively for the Scarlet Knights, and injuries on the offensive side of the ball are starting to hurt as well. Campbell at running back. And, the Scarlet Knights might be looking at yet another variation along the offensive line. Dante Chin's done for the season. His replacement, Needham, last week against Norfolk State, went out with an injury. Still no word in terms of whether or not he'll be available come Friday night. So concerns a little bit along the offensive line and what should be a really good Iowa defense. And we know the concern when you look at the Hawkeyes is whether or not they're going to be able to score enough points.
Yeah, and I think the physicality of Iowa, too. I think the fact it's like so many teams in all the other conferences as well, Rutgers has yet to line up against a Power Four team, and you see how well they played, and the momentum is there. But until you see them line up against a team that has the physicality of an Iowa, you can see how they're going to match up this year in the conference.
Yeah, no question. And I think, Friday night there, it's going to be a blackout. It's going to be Fox. It's going to be an 8:00 start. They're expecting, a packed SHI stadium. They're leaning on the fans to get into it. I think they will. I mean, it's the fifth straight year that a Greg Schiano team, since he has come back to Piscataway, has gotten off to a 3-0 start, and beating Ohio, Miami of Ohio, and then obviously last Saturday, Michael Vick in Norfolk State. So, but now the real test begins. And Coach Schiano talked about that after the victory over the Spartans on Saturday. Similar to what you said, Terry, is like you go into this is Big Ten play. So everything gets ramped up a notch. The players will even attune. Everything's a little bigger, a little faster, a little stronger as compared to who they faced early on in the regular season. Now you'll get kind of a little bit of a litmus test on Friday night to see where this team is. I do know a couple of things. Listen, I do know if Cali McManus is protected, and I know that's an if going up against Iowa's front, that he could throw it. And he's got weapons on the outside. I don't know if I necessarily think the ground game is necessarily as good as it was when Kyle Monangai was in the backfield, and he was drafted by the Chicago Bears in the 7th round. I like the three-headed monster they have. Campbell's health is a little bit concerning. Antoine Raymond has been good, but nobody has been as diverse as what Monangai present, because Monangai was a guy that you could trust in passing downs as well, and was a guy that was tremendous in picking up the blitz and was a physical runner for a guy his size. So those are things, and a staple of a Schiano offense is he wants to run it. I don't know if they'll necessarily be able to run it on Iowa. I think they can throw it. I'm concerned about the Scarlet Knights defense, especially when you look at the secondary and all the inexperience that is there. And you've seen issues in communication early on in the first 3 games. Hasn't come back to hurt them on the scoreboard to where they've lost one of these games. It could hurt them when they take on a team like Iowa.
Well, Mark, that's where I want to stay, because we can't bet this game in New Jersey, right? But it's a 2.5-point number in favor of Iowa. Iowa's 4-0 all time against Rutgers. Last time they played was 2 years ago. They won 22-0. They shut them out. But you look at the Iowa offense with Gronowski. They're only averaging 122 passing yards per game.
Yeah.
They struggle with Iowa State. So I have to be when I look at this line and I say 2.5, I think Rutgers is live in a big way. And you look at Kelly McManus in this matchup, 72% completion percentage. They're averaging 461 total yards per game. They have a 100-yard advantage to what Iowa does just in terms of balance of an offensive attack. I think as long as Rutgers starts fast, and that's the key, they cannot fall behind against a blue-collar, methodical, ugly type of offense where they're just going to look to grind it out and win 17-3 and get out of Dodge. I think that if Rutgers pushes a little tempo, they can win this outright, and we could get over this number of 46.5.
Yeah, Joe, I don't think you're out of the I agree with you. I think the start is key because that feeds the fans, right? You don't want to have Iowa all of a sudden out 14-0 in this game, and then you're trying to claw back against the team that wants to make it ugly. So I think Rutgers wants to send a statement early on Friday night that they're in this game, and I don't disagree with you. I think this is a winnable game. Whether or not they win it, well, they got to take care of the football. And I will say, like, the concerns on defense are real. I'd be a little bit concerned in terms of being able to, even though I was not a great offensive attack, sometimes bad offenses can look good against defenses that are trying to find themselves. And, the coaching staff has talked about it, that, this is going to be a case of, well, we're not playing our best defensively at the start of the season. We're going to evolve and get better as this season goes along. DJ Jabomi is an unbelievable inside linebacker, led the team in tackles a year ago. The secondary coverage has been an issue, and it was an issue last week at times, even in a 60-10 victory against Norfolk State, where they allowed one big play after another. Now, does Iowa have the ability to go out there and take advantage of that? Well, we'll see on Friday night, but I don't disagree with you, Joe. I think Rutgers is live. I think they want to try and send a statement early on in the season and get their first Big Ten victory of the year and get themselves to 4-0.
Yeah, and I think the secondary of Rutgers, it's not going to be how well they can cover the pass; it's how well can they come up and make tackles. Because I
Fair.
think this game is I was going to want to do what they like to do, run the football, and now that secondary has to fill in the gaps, has to come up and support into the box. Make sure they don't give up a big play over top you because anytime you run, you get a short yardage. You better expect a deep ball. About the only way I was going to want to throw it is when they got a second one, I think. But that toughness is there, and I kind of wanted to ask about that with Greg Schiano. Everybody knows about Coach Schiano and what he's done at New Jersey. He seems to have an identity because that's where he's from. I've known him because he's coached all over. He's part of the
Yeah.
coaching fraternity, but he just has a great relationship. It seems like with Rutgers and with New Jersey, and it reminds me. I played at West Virginia back in the '70s. We used to recruit New Jersey like crazy. A lot of our players would come because there is good football in the state of New Jersey.
Yeah, I mean, there is. I mean, Bergen Catholic, our alum, Don Bosco Prep, they're off to an undefeated start. But yeah, there's a ton of blue chip talent in Jersey. And Terry, Coach, I think you're dead on correct. I think what you've seen when Schiano left and went to Tampa, and you had other coaches step in, they couldn't really get a hold of everything that encompasses the Rutgers job. And it's a lot. I mean, it just is, especially now with NIL. And when you're competing with, Penn State, and when you're competing with, now Syracuse and Fran Brown and everything like that, and you're trying to keep guys home in the Garden State. So NIL has changed that. But I think Coach Schiano, when you look at it, I think he has taken this opportunity and run with it. He's built this program once again. He talks about it being a developmental program. He understands what his strengths are and what this team needs to go out there and do. It's been a while since they found a quarterback that has been as accurate as Cali McManus is on the college level.
Right.
They've done a nice job, and he does a good job of developing defensive backs and linebackers. And a staple of Schiano's teams have always been, good defense. We want to go out there and run the football. We're going to be tough and physical up front. We're not going to beat ourselves. Also a staple is the special teams and being consistent with special teams. They've got a hell of a field goal kicker in Jay Patel, who's basically perfect for his career inside of 45 yards. Not great in long distance, but they're usually good in terms of developing pressure on opposing punters as well. But yeah, I think Rutgers fans loves him. He loves being the head coach of the Scarlet Knights. And Friday night, he wants to try and send a message to not only everyone in Jersey, but the rest of the Big Ten with a big-time win.
They get that victory, that's going to carry a long way because they then go on the road mark to Minnesota.
Yep.
They have a bye week. They have another tough road game against Washington. It's not going to be easy, but, if that defense steps up with Damon Williams, you can never say never. If they get them into that lower scoring game, then Oregon, at Purdue, and then at Illinois. This is a gauntlet at Ohio State and then Penn State. I would think that as long as they get to 6 or 7 wins and they somehow, some way could be competitive against Ohio State and Penn State. They've lost 10 straight to the Buckeyes, 17 straight to the Nittany Lions. Yeah, I mean, they got it. They get one of those, Mark. That he doesn't have to win 10 games. That's it right there.
No, I mean, that is an unbelievable season. I mean, Joe, from your lips to God's ears. I mean, that's an unbelievable year if it plays out that way. But I think I think the expectations coming in is into this season is let's take a step forward as a program. And when you mentioned let's be competitive against the likes of Oregon and Penn State and Ohio State to where not necessarily, we're coming out victorious, but that those are games in the second half. And there have been times for this program under other head coaches where those games weren't particularly close. And, it got out of hand in the second half. So, yeah, I'll disagree with you, but yeah, I think the way that the schedule sets up is you've got to do your damage early on in this season, hope that you stay healthy, and then see if this team evolves and gets better, especially on the defensive side of the ball as the season goes along.
All right, before you go, give us a pick. I know you're looking at the college slate. You got anything under the radar before you're on PIX tonight at 11.
No,
Come on,
listen.
what do you
No,
got?
I didn't take. No, Joe, I texted you the other day. I don't even on Lisi for his selections. What are you talking about? Like Joe is basically he's on a heater. I mean, that's it. And when Joe texted me, he's like, "Will you mind coming on with me and Terry Bowden?" I'm like, "Terry Bowden, of course. I loved you, Coach. I loved you when you were on the plains down in Auburn. It was unbelievable watching you."
Mark does a great job.
Yeah, hey, you know what? I remember, you're working with the fan. The fan. When I was up at ABC, you got to tell me. Remember the guy? And this is off the topic. Rudy Martzke. Do y'all remember the Rudy Martzke? The guy that used to analyze the coaches. Drove me crazy. I was an analyst, but I was with ABC Sports. And I said, this guy, Rudy Marcy, is the luckiest guy in the world. He doesn't have to coach him. He doesn't have to analyze the game. He gets to analyze the analyst. And that's what he always would critique us. And he once told me, Coach, he said, Coach, if you could just take care of that Southern accent, you'd be okay. And I said, Rudy, this Southern accent sounds like college football. Just remember that.
That's it. I love it. I love it. I wish I had a Southern accent. I have a New York accent.
That's it. I'm the one. I'm the outlier. I'm the northerner trying to break down Auburn and SEC football. But catch Mark tonight. Mark, you're on at 11 tonight on WPIX?
I'll be on doing sports tonight. Yankees Mets about 10:45 tonight.
And he does a great he does the post game and pre-game for Rutgers.
Yeah,
and I catch you on Sundays when I'm driving to the studio for your Giant Talk. Love the Open too.
Love it.
Nothing better. Love it, my friend.
You're the best. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Moose.
All right. He's the best. Let me tell you something, Coach. Moose and I didn't know. Mark and I went to the same high school. I had no idea.
Wow.
I'm older. Yeah, we went to Don Bosco Prep, so he is great. Moose is the best. He knows horses. He knows everything about the Jets, Giants, and obviously covers Rutgers better than everybody and wanted to get his take. That's a really big game for Schiano and Rutgers because you're talking about now a team that's been dominated by Iowa. They can go on Friday night at home, make a statement, and be 4-0, pick up a conference win. I'm not suggesting they're going to push Penn State. They're going to push Ohio State. But the way Vandy's getting all this love right now in the SEC, Rutgers could be that team where, hey, Oregon goes there in middle of October. That's not an easy ride.
No, and that's exactly right. I think the Vandy situation in the SEC is maybe tougher than Rutgers in the Big Ten. I just think that they can get themselves into a very, very competitive level. I think what you and I have asked ourselves and the question that we have presented is teams like Rutgers that develop players so well. I mean, Schiano does a great job of managing his roster, of developing players. And yet with NILs, if they don't do a great job down the road with NILs, then they're going to be grooming players for the Penn States and the Michigans. They've got to make sure they do a good job down the road, like the Bandys and other schools are doing, where they're going to keep the good players there. And that's being done now with money, not just a dynamic head coach and a developmental type program.
It is, and when they get Kaliak Manis from Minnesota, who would have thought they got that quarterback from PJ Fleck and the Golden Gophers, just a few years ago? But they have gone that route, and we'll see exactly if he could step up. I will say this: I give the edge over him over Iowa's quarterback Gronowski. I watched him play against Iowa State. Was not impressed. Again, it's the same old Iowa offense.
Same
thing. If they don't get 4 yards on the first down in the running game, they're behind the sticks on third down and can't play from behind. So that's why I think it's critical for Rutgers to step up in this matchup. Let's take a look, Coach, at some other storylines because this is the big one too as it relates to the Big Ten and SEC. Who do we believe is better? Because when we look at FanDuel and we look at some of the odds up on FanDuel for the national championship, 1, 2, and 3, Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon. Are we buying that still, even though we're early in the year and even though right now we're week 4? Are we buying that Ohio State is more complete than, let's say, LSU or Georgia or some of the other teams in the SEC? I'm not buying it right now.
Now, I don't think you can buy it by exactly how well they play right now. I think the only thing you can go with is look at the number of the athletes they have on their roster, how good those athletes are compared to others. We know what they've done with their athletes. They've won a championship. We know what Kirby Smart has done with those athletes. So I think right now, the only reason that some people like that may be getting the most odds on getting to the national championship is because of the number of NFL quality athletes have got on their team, and where that's going to have them at the end of the season. But I still think there are teams that we're not even know about yet that are going to be in that hunt, because we got some big games coming up with teams that are very close to jumping to that upper echelon, especially when they play when the Georgias and the Texas and Alabamas have to play these people, or Penn State and Ohio State. They've got to play some people down the road. We haven't talked much about them after that opening week, and we're going to see these teams play against other top teams, and we'll get a little better perspective. But I guarantee it, we're going to see some teams in the final 12 that really have a chance to go up that we don't really think right now based on the odds.
Yeah, I agree. I'll say this. I know people are putting the Ohio State win over Texas as the one, right? Meaning that's why Ohio State, and granted, defending national champs, are they the same team as last year? You want to give them the benefit of the doubt. I don't have a problem with that. What I do have a problem with is pricing Oregon and pricing Penn State ahead of the likes of Georgia or LSU right now with that body of work. I'll say this. I don't believe Texas was the best team in the conference coming in week one. With or without Arch Manning, to me, I just didn't think Texas was complete. They showed that their week one performance. We don't know how good Texas is because they haven't played anybody, right? You play San Jose State, you play another team that you just beat into the ground. That doesn't do it for me. I need to see you go on the road again in an SEC environment and step up and beat a top 10 opponent. That might not happen until they face Oklahoma. I believe, and tell me if I'm wrong, that Georgia still, with that road effort, and I understand it wasn't the typical Georgia way, but the way Gunnar Stockton made throws, the way that offense came on, to go into Knoxville, trail by 14, find your way, trail by 8. He throws a dime, a literal dime I forget now, Humphreys, right? And they go for 2, and then they pull it out. That wasn't the best Kirby Smart defense, but I have more confidence in that team the rest of the regular season than anybody else the rest of the way. It's consistency.
Well, and again, I think we saw something. I'll say this about Georgia. We know how good they can play defense. I think after last year, we questioned, did they get their run game back? Is this new quarterback able to throw it? Because you got to be good on both sides of the ball. Sometimes you got to outscore people. I said this on X today about LSU because we still have an uncertainty about how their offense is going to play. And the LSU fans, they can only compare LSU to the last championship team. And that one used to score like crazy. And so the key is that you have the ability to score when you get into a scoring match. Number one, and why I love Georgia, and I've got Georgia on top as well, is the way they play defense. Now, Ohio State, I still think the talent level they've got, and they pretty much blasted the people. They haven't played a lot of people since that opening game. I still feel with them strong. But I'm going to say this about Texas. I said before the season, hey, fellas, Arch Manning may not be Peyton Manning or Eli Manning or Archie Manning, his grandfather. He may be just a good quarterback. But right now, I think they're trying to figure out just how good he is, because that whole Texas thing was based on Arch Manning. Not his fault. I'm not sure he wanted that much attention on him. But unless he improves and shows he's ready to play, and he's not showing that yet, they're going to be not the Texas everybody thought they were.
Exactly. And again, you lose Matt Golden, you lose Isaiah Bond, you lose Gunnar Helm, you lose Blue. I mean, they lost a lot offensively, and they were just expected not to miss a beat because Arch Manning walks behind center, and that's not the way it works. And again, there's parity in the SEC. You look at Texas's schedule, you look at Georgia's schedule. It's a black and blue type of division now with the likes of Oklahoma and Texas in the conference, and it's just that way. I do feel too, and the last thing, the team that stepped up and really showcased what they have is Texas A&M, another team that made a statement on Saturday night. Now the question is, and I've heard this throughout the week again from a bunch of talking heads, and I don't buy into it, but they get paid to make opinions and they get paid to talk about these teams. I don't buy Clemson or Notre Dame. If you're asking me right now, do they deserve to, even if they make a run, do they deserve to be in the playoff? My answer is no. I haven't seen them step up against top 25 competition. I don't care that Notre Dame lost both games by a small margin of victory. When we think about Notre Dame and we think about the run last year, it was all predicated on defense. That defense has been a sieve in back-to-back games against Miami and Texas A&M. I can't buy in. I don't care if they win 10 straight. They don't have the body of work with the likes of Arkansas, Boise State, Purdue, Navy. They can't do enough to get into the playoff. And the same thing with Clemson. The only thing that might save Clemson is if they win a conference championship and all the other conferences are 500.
Well, no, I think that's why I don't put Clemson in Notre Dame's position yet, because they have a conference championship, and I think that don't they play Florida State down the road? They've got to play in Miami and Miami. I believe both. I think they play during, so they're going to have a chance to play, because I think Miami is that team that has moved itself back up into that top echelon of football teams, whether you pick them fifth or first. I think they're getting to that point. That's the only reason. Now, Clemson, what I've seen so far, I don't think they can do it. I don't think they're good enough, but they have a schedule that if they were to get that thing going, and again, I have Dabo. I said this yesterday a little bit. Dabo Swinney he is a generational coach to Clemson. He has changed that program around for a generation. Now, I don't know. He's not an NCAA college football generational coach like Nick Saban, who really went out there and dominated the whole conference. But he has shown he has been able to work through adversity, change coaching staffs. But I personally think they've got a good team. I just don't see a conference championship team as an automatic with them. They'll have to show me now.
Yeah, and again, they do face Clemson. I have the schedule up. It's in Death Valley, November 8th. That's assuming Florida State. Florida State is 7th in the country. Florida State still has to play Miami. Florida State still has some difficult games. But assuming Florida State is 7th in the nation, that could be a game where obviously you pick up a top 10 win and style points will matter. That could help Dabo Swinney. I guess part of it too, Coach, and I agree with you, when he took over for Tommy and he took over for your brother, they gave him an opportunity to build the foundation. It wasn't a 1-year fix.
No.
It wasn't a 2-year fix. It was more like a 4 to 5 year fix. And it didn't happen until Taj Boyd and Clemson and Sammy Watkins knocked off LSU in the Peach Bowl that you said, okay, the ACC could go with toe-to-toe with the SEC, right? And those championship games with Alabama, Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, you're right. He built the foundation. He built the winning culture. He got 2 national championships. And I don't want to say he got complacent, but the transfer portal was something that he was steadfast against.
That's right.
It's going to take him for a way to potentially, get back to where he was, right? It might take him another couple of years.
He's going to have to go all the way on the portal transfer NILs. He's going to have to go all in. He loves that saying, "Are you all in for Clemson?" I just think they have to be all in. Not that everybody comes from the portal. Not everybody get with NIL. They got to be willing to whatever it takes. I went down there and worked as an analyst for 2 years, and the one thing Dabo did, he went to Alabama. He played football at Alabama, and he did one thing. He said, Clemson, we're going to have every facility they've got, we're going to have. We're going to be just like them facility-wise, budget-wise. pay salary wise, and they made a commitment to him and changed everything. That now, when my brother Tommy was there, they weren't quite ready to make that move. But Dabo talked to. He's a very persuasive guy. He talked him into making that move, and that's what we talk about. Is this team is a Rutgers willing to pay enough NIL to get to the next level? Are you willing to make all those kind of commitments? We're seeing Texas Tech try to take another step with the NIL money. We see that there. We see what Miami is. And look how good Miami now starts to resemble the Miamis of old because of their ability 2 years in a row to bring in a lot of real good portal transfer guys that you got to bring in with the money. And so I think that's what you've got to look at. So Clemson, they've got, whether they can do it this year or not, I'm not willing to block to say no way, but I have less confidence that they'll win that conference now based on what I've seen so far.
Now, on FanDuel, they are 17.5-point home favorites, and they're playing a Syracuse team in Steve Angeli that leads FBS with total passing yards. And we saw that with Kyle McCord last year, right? 4,775. They could put up points. This Clemson offense is going to have to score. It can't be, hey, we'll methodically work through the first half and we'll find a way to pull it up. They have traditionally in recent years struggled with Syracuse, right? Now, Syracuse feels like they could score, so they're going to chuck it. Do you like Clemson this week against Syracuse? My theory is if you're ever going to back Clemson, it comes this week, lay in the 17.5. Because if you're not getting it this week, Coach, you're not getting it the rest of the year.
That only because of the 17.5 do I go with Clemson, because I think they will respond, but I'm not sure that they're 7.5 points better than a lot of teams they're going to play, and not necessarily Syracuse. I think Syracuse, they can beat them if they're given that kind of leeway to beat them, but I guarantee it. If it was going to be, it would be tighter. I'd be a little bit reluctant to jump on Clemson in that game.
We'll see. I would probably lay it. I think I would even take the over just because, hey, if I'm Dabo and I'm Cade Klubnik and my quarterback's starting to get a little momentum, there's no reason to stop, right? Throw for 600 yards in this game. Let's get it right, and let's start to feel good about ourselves again as well. And we talk about the dominance with Clemson at home, Coach. That is lost, that luster, right? You struggle with Troy, you don't cover. You lose outright to LSU. You lost at the end of the regular season to South Carolina. You lost earlier in the year last year to Louisville. Now, those all came at home. Now's an opportunity. If you have an opponent down and out, you step on them and try to cover that number, right?
Absolutely. And again, I don't know if you've watched the Dabo Swinney press conferences this week, but I mean, he was telling his alumni in the press, hey, if y'all don't want me, fire me. I'll go coach somewhere else. And I'm thinking,
I saw that.
That just shows you. He said, folks, we've won a lot of football games here. I'm gonna get this thing done. But as much as it said, he's having to tell people that. He's having to convince people that. So I think it's interesting. But I guess, like I say, long season, I still think they've got enough talent to get them back in the ACC championship football game. But they must come out there and throw it down the field and score and look really good. If they don't look good against Syracuse, whether they don't beat the line or that Syracuse plays it too close, he could lose those kids. He could lose those kids and those fans, just enough for them not to have a season that they can live with, because they can't live with a 7-win season at Clemson right now.
No, they can't. They can't. So let me show you this, because Jake Wimberly from ESPN Jackson, Mississippi will be joining us in just about 5 minutes. I decided to take a look at some of the best and worst third down offenses. You know how I believe that is a key to how college plays, right? So look at I don't know if you could see this. I'm going to put it up on the screen, okay? And take a look at this. Third down offenses in FBS headed through week 3. Arkansas at almost 72%, Coach, right? Taylon Green, Devin Dampier and Utah, 71%. Washington, Damon Williams, 70%. TCU, 69%. Oregon, 63%. Navy with the triple option, 62%. and their quarterback Horvath. Missouri with Bo Perbula, that line is going down on FanDuel. We'll talk about that against South Carolina, 62%. Nebraska, that has Michigan at 62, Indiana at 61, and Vandy at 60. And I've said this, Coach. I said that in order to win games, you need to convert on third down, and you need to have great third down defense. I'm going to give you the bottom 5. You're going to probably smile at this one. Okay? 134 teams in FBS. Sam Houston State, 13% on third down conversions. Terrible. Horrible.
Not going to win.
Right? Miami of Ohio with Daquan Finn. I don't know did you coach against Daquan Finn when he was at Toledo?
I don't think he was. No, I don't think so. I've been gone about 6 years from the
yeah.
mat,
So
I've coached
right.
against Miami.
I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if you faced him at ULM, but Miami of Ohio, he transferred out 17%. Here's this one. They got rid of one of the all-time winningest coaches in Akron, Ohio, Terry Bowden, that took his team to an 8-5 record, first bowl win in school history. They moved on. Akron at 22%, dead bottom, basically 132 out of 134 teams with Joe Moorhead. UCLA, they fired Deshaun Foster, 22%, and Utah State at 23%. Those are all losing teams and programs on the bottom of the barrel. How important is third down to potentially at least score points and win games in college football?
Well, let me say this. Third downs, being good at third downs begins with being good at first down and reducing the yardage, because when you are not good at mixing it up and doing well on first and second, you're going to have bad third down situations, playing either behind the chains or in a long yardage situation. So one, as you tell me, and I agree, and to tell everybody else, those people that can run the football effectively, they don't have to run all the time. Those that can run effectively will have the most third and shorts. We'll have the makeable third downs, and so that's critical. But I will say this, you only have about 12 to 14 possessions in a ball game. Every time you don't make a third down, you're punting to the other team, and you've cut that one short. And that's why a third down is so critical. And that's why every week of practice, we spend a large amount of time just on third downs. Red zone, goal line, short yardage, third downs, that's a critical down. Now, I think the great offenses know how to call plays on first down, the runs and the passes and mixing it up, because that's when the defense doesn't know what you're going to do. But third down's the one you got to know how to make, because you got to make third downs to keep the ball, to chains moving, and to keep the ball in your hands.
We'll see. Like I said, bottom of the hour, ESPN host out of Jackson, Mississippi, Jake Wimberly will be joining us. There's some critical games in the conference that we'll get to. But you're right. And I think it's interesting when we look at some of the other big games this week, Michigan and Nebraska, right? Can Bryce Underwood make plays on third down? Something that he couldn't do against Oklahoma, right? We give the edge to Nebraska's offense. We give the edge to Matt Rule playing at home. But you just look at the statistics for Michigan. They're a 2.5-point road favorite on FanDuel right now. They have won 4 straight in the series. Now, they didn't play last year, but they have won 4 straight by an average margin of victory against the Cornhuskers of almost 30 points per game, 29.5 points per game. They have dominated each and every season that they step up. Now, there was one year where the game potentially went to overtime back in, I think it was 2022. It was a 32-29 Michigan win. But I look at this offense right now with Underwood. He's only completing 57% of his passes. They're averaging 242 on the ground, 209 through the air. And Raiola is completing 76% of his passes, right? 8 touchdowns, no interceptions. What does Michigan have to do to pull this victory out? Lower scoring game, just the way they did against Oklahoma, or are they going to put the ball in the kid's hands?
No, I think they need to let him run when he can and use his athletic talent. But when a game now, and that's at Nebraska, which is a pretty good home field to play in, difficult on opponents, with a head coach who's got that team moving. And I think the quarterback is still young in regard to playing big games on the road. I would be afraid again to just say go out there and let's just sling the ball around. I would say let's give him some passes and let him run and get him to run if it's open because he does have great dual threat capabilities. Whether Israel at Nebraska is kind of a drop back type quarterback that's going to want to throw it, but he's got another year of experience ahead of this one. So that's why I think of Nebraska with the quarterback they've got and the experience that he has at home. I like them with that 2.5 points to win this game over Michigan.
I haven't decided yet. I am leaning Nebraska.
Yeah.
We'll get into that game in a couple of minutes. But I mentioned we'll be joined by Jake Wimberly. Jake does a great job out in Jackson, Mississippi. ESPN host of The Drive. He covers Ole Miss. He covers the Bulldogs. Jake, thanks for joining us tonight. Who thought that in week number 4, Blake Shapen and the Bulldogs would be 3-0? Did you know that?
No, I didn't, Joseph Lisi. Thank you for having me. Coach Bowden, I'm one of your biggest fans. You never know you had. I followed your career, so it's a pleasure to be on with you, sir.
Well, it's great. I know every time I drive down Highway 20 from Birmingham to Louisiana Monroe, where I live, by the bumps of my car, I know when I'm going through Jackson because my car bounces up on the interstate. It's the bouncingest interstate in America right outside of Jackson. But great to see you. And it is, I tell you, Mississippi State, the way they beating Arizona State like they did, I think, and I've been there at Starkville, when those daggum cowbells start going, it's a different home field atmosphere. What they lack in total attendance, they make up with cowbell noise.
They do. And look, but you've got to credit, I think, Jeff Lebby and their staff. They really went in and tried to, use the powers that be with the transfer portal and the collective there, the Bulldog Initiative. They've done a good job raising money, and it is today's college football. Joseph, I know we've talked about that. I know you and Coach Bowden probably speak about that a lot, but really rebuilt the roster, gave Blake Shapen some tools to work with at wide receiver. Now this is by far a final product, but what you see is, in the word coming out of fall camp was, hey, they've got a team that looks like an SEC football team. And that may sound funny and cute, but they did not look the part last year of an SEC football team. So, so far so good. They've got a big test with Northern Illinois. And if they can get by that, they'll welcome Tennessee next week and be 4-0. And, it'll be a different type of ball game and atmosphere there at Starkville.
Oh, it will. And I tell you what, I think back to just Mississippi State and Tennessee. That was Peyton Manning's first start, right? Taking over for Todd Helton back in the day in Stark Vegas. And I've always said this, that, it is such a difficult landscape if you're not used to it in Arizona State, playing in the Big 12 and the Pac-12 for years, never experienced that type of atmosphere down in Starkville. And they just got the best of them. And that was a very physical Arizona State team. And that's the biggest thing this year when I look at the transition under Jeff Lebby. Year one, they ran the football more. Shapen was injured, and they were starting to find the players that fit the scheme, didn't fit the scheme. And now that offense is starting to hum, eerily similar to what he had in Oklahoma, right? He had more offensive balance. They're starting to get playmakers. They have wideouts and wide receivers that could take the top off the defense. And if they're 4-0, Jake, the mindset here in Starkville's got to be off the charts going, to face off against Tennessee in just a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think you like at least a puncher's chance at a ball game like that. One of the things that we've seen, and you guys know this, Jeff Lebby is a guy that he's a quarterback friendly guy, and we've seen, and we wanted to see it, and so far we have. Year two with Matt Corral at Ole Miss when he was offensive coordinator under Lane Kiffin, a much better year than year one. Dylan Gabriel at Oklahoma, much better year when he got there. So what we're seeing with Blake Shapen is kind of that transformation in year two. Some guys that can really catch the football. They're playing good defense. And look, for Mississippi State, I mean, here's the goal. And I don't think Jeff Lebby would tell you probably privately any differently is, hey, let's get to 4-0. And then let's try to find a couple Southeastern Conference ball games that we can go win. They're not going to win the conference. They're not going to make the college football playoff, but just to show that marked improvement and get this team back to, postseason play. While a lot of fans don't, they don't think a whole lot about lower tier bowl games anymore, but, with the practices and everything that goes with that, and Coach, obviously, about that, but just to have that forward momentum and, the air smells a little different, the food tastes a little better. They're just trying to get this program back in the right direction right now.
Yeah. And I think I mean,
No,
let me just say this. I think back to when I first went to Auburn, and they had two losing seasons and three losses to Alabama. You got to make sure you win the games you have the ability to win. The Northern Illinois, go out there and make sure you get those wins. Take them everything you got to win those games, because there's going to be other teams in the conference that are going to be favored that you got to find a way to upset somebody. This is one where you want to make sure you focus on the fundamentals of the game and doing the little things, because these little teams like this, I've coached in the MAC against the Northern Illinois and people like that. They can be kind of sporty.
No, there's no doubt about it. Yeah, I mean, look, Mississippi State saw this last year. Toledo came in and really run Mississippi State out of their own building. And I don't think you want to have another scenario like that. I mean, I know this is a totally different Northern Illinois team, but from last year, they went in and beat Notre Dame, in South Bend last year. So
right.
I think Jeff Libby will have this team dialed in. I mean, he knows what's at stake, and you don't want to have all this goodwill go away in 4 quarters this weekend.
No, absolutely. Here's the other thing, too, and I agree with that. Mississippi State undefeated, it just is great for the conference for some of these other teams, right? Forget the Texas and Georgia, but you look at a team like, looking to get in the mix, South Carolina, depending upon if Lenore Sellers plays, and it looks like he will. We'll get into that. But, they're going on the road to Missouri. Some of these other teams to get potentially a quality win, depending upon how it plays out. And for Miss State, they could play spoiler the rest of the way, right? I mean, if they get to 8 or 9 wins, Jake, that is a huge success story for Jeff Lebby in just 2 years. And now he could really build a foundation to what we see Lane Kiffin in Oxford, right? Lane, it took a couple of years, and then all of a sudden they were a dark horse potentially for a playoff last year. It didn't work out. They were one of the teams that a lot of people were banking on to maybe challenge the likes of Texas and Georgia. So I agree with that. Talk to me about what we saw transpire in Oxford last week. Is Trinidad Chambliss the guy? Or is Austin Simmons still going to be starting, come in 2 weeks against LSU in the Grove?
I mean, I think you have to, and I would defer to Coach Bowden on this, but I would think you would have to at least let him compete for that job, right? I mean, you go out against an Arkansas team that's a quality opponent, and the guy looked like he had been the starting quarterback for 3 years there at Ole Miss. He did everything right. And one of the things we know about Lane Kiffin is he's a quarterback-friendly guy. His scheme and schematics are very good for quarterbacks. And Trinidad Chambliss, I mean, look, you talk about a steal in the portal. I mean, I remember when Ole Miss got him, a lot of people scratched their head and said, why did Lane Kiffin go get this quarterback out of the portal that's, nobody's ever heard of and played for an FCS ball club? Well, now you see why. So, yeah, Joseph, I think you've got to at least look at this guy. If Austin Simmons is still a little banged up, I think it's Trinidad Chambliss. And look, he may be the starting guy the rest of the way, depending on how this thing shakes out.
Yeah, and I know one thing, knowing Lane Kiffin, I've coached against him. He's the master of the rope-a-dope. When a guy goes down, you don't know if they're hurt or not hurt, and we don't know which quarterback's going to be ready to play. But I'm kind of with you. The Trinidad Chambliss, I mean, he got them to another level. And Austin Simmons throws a couple of interceptions that get him behind. He just needs to stay locked in as well. It'll be interesting. I'm not sure that decision is played out for the rest of the year. But I know one thing, after what he showed, if you play all Austin Simmons, Chambliss will be a Cam Ward who goes from one AA to Washington State to he'll be moving. It's really hard to keep a guy in backup if you're not playing him in some way, because of the way that everybody's seen now how he can play.
Here's the thing, Jake, too. Let me ask you this. I know you're a Blitnikoff Award voter. So we know about Jeremiah Smith. We know Ryan Williams. But if Brennan Thompson and Harrison Wallace continue to put up numbers, they're top 20 in both of the categories, right? For FBS, leading all receivers. Could they potentially make some noise to potentially challenge Ryan Williams? Now, Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith get all of the accolades, but both of these players are stepping up for Ole Miss and Miss State.
No, they really are. I mean, look, they're go-to guys. They're guys that have found homes. I don't think that they'll I mean, I think you could probably see them on the list. I mean, it's very, very hard to challenge, what's going on at Alabama and what's going on at Ohio State. But look, for especially Mississippi State, they have not had quality wide receiver play I mean, you've got to go back to probably the 2014, 2015 season with Dan Mullen when they had Jerronye Wilson and they had some other guys that were on that roster. And rest in peace to that young man. But they just have not had quality wide receivers. Now, obviously, with Will Rogers there and Mike Leach, they had some guys that could play wide receiver, but not a guy that could just take the top off of a defense. So I think Ole Miss and Mississippi State have quality wideouts. You look around the league in the SEC, there's a lot of teams that have really good wideouts. I mean, you look at, Mario Craver, who's, I believe, at Texas A&M. He had a pop-off game this past weekend at Notre Dame. Mississippi State would love to have that guy back, but it's just the nature of the league. You've got to have that guy, I think, that one or two that can really, cause a defense to have to scheme a little differently. And I think both of them have that. And I think both those guys will at least be on the list.
You mentioned you're involved with the Fred Biletnikoff Award. I'm going to put you on the spot now. Do you know who his receiver coach was in 63, 4, and 5 when he played football in college?
63, 4, and 5 when he was in college. Oh boy, Coach, I do not. You got me there.
Bobby Bowden. My dad was the receiver coach, and he said he used to tell us that he would go home and Fred would never drop a pass in practice. And if you remember Fred Biletnikoff, the greatest probably hands, not the greatest speed, but the greatest hands in football. And we're seeing a lot. It's funny because we're seeing a lot of receivers around the country that maybe aren't the most gifted in their speed, but they've got length and they can catch that football. And we've seen some of the most phenomenal catches this year, I think, that we've seen in a while during these football games.
I agree with that. I mean, it just the position continues to get better. I mean, just you go to one play, just one spotlight play, and you could go to probably 7 or 8 over the weekend. I mean, the fourth down play Georgia had, I mean, just really throwing the ball, kind of put it in that 50-50 type ball. I mean, the position has changed so much now when you've got a guy that can, out wrestle and out athletic a defensive back in football, you got something.
I want to get your take, Jake. Ole Miss has beaten Tulane 13 straight years. The last time they played was a couple of years ago. It was 37-20. Tulane had them dead to rights in that game. Yeah. And the kid for Ole Miss nailed a 55-yarder to change the whole momentum. And then Walter Nolan and that defense came over and they took it over. Could Tulane be a thorn in Ole Miss's side this weekend?
I think there's possible for sure. And look, Lane Kiffin has talked, in his press conferences this week about, that team and that coaching staff and how good they are. I mean, look, you better take Tulane serious. They're going to be one of the teams that's going to be at least being mentioned right there for one of the teams that could make the college football playoff is that one group of 5 team. This is a team that, they throw it pretty well with Jake Retzlaff. And, of course, they've got some guys that can run the football as well. Retzlaff, he's a dual threat guy. He can cause some problems for Ole Miss. So I think Ole Miss is the better team. If they play this game 5 times, Ole Miss probably wins 4. But there's always that one shot. So they can't let Tulane hang around and believe. They're really going to have to get after it. But I think it's probably a 3-quarter, 4-quarter ball game. It's one they got to take seriously here.
Yeah, I think Tulane, because of John Sumrall, and I coached against John Sumrall when he was at Troy. He's a tough guy. He's a blue-collar coach. He's a tough, and you don't think of Tulane as being that academic school, but they are a tough football team. They play great defense, and that's one you got to keep. If you're Ole Miss, you better keep your eye on this one because right now I got Ole Miss winning, but I like that 11.5 points on Tulane. Yeah. I just think that's a big number, and Tulane is going to. They've already beaten Northwestern and a very athletic Duke. I think Ole Miss is a little bit of a sleeper. Nobody is given much thought to Ole Miss this year. Like last year with their team, it was just all Ole Miss, Ole Miss, Ole Miss. And I went to the Georgia Ole Miss game in Oxford, and I thought Ole Miss had better football players on that field that day. But this team is kind of creeping in under the radar.
No, they are. And look, this game will go a long way to trying to, I had Ole Miss and what I do in my college football metrics at 8-4 this year. This will really set the table if they can get by this. And I know you guys will speak on it next week, but with LSU coming in, the home team in that LSU Ole Miss game, they've won the last 5 meetings. So Ole Miss gets this game at home. They can't overlook one Louisiana team for the other one. So they need to take care of Tulane. And if they do that, this will set up a big, big matchup in Oxford next weekend.
Oh, going to be huge. Let me tell you, that game last year with Jackson Dart, if it wasn't for that defense and secondary by Blake Baker, they don't pull that game out. They won it in overtime. And I remember the game in the Grove a couple of years ago, Jaden Daniels and Dart both put up numbers. It was last man standing. Ole Miss had to make a play in the end zone to end it. So great stuff, Jake. Anything else you're looking at with the hourglass. You do a fantastic job with the analytics on the drive. Anything else you're looking at this weekend?
Well, I'm really looking to see, can Vanderbilt keep pace? I know they've got, a couple games coming up where we had their play-by-play voice on yesterday, and we were just talking through, kind of what's going on up there in Nashville. I want to see if they can continue to, now they're not sneaking up on anybody. So they continue to do that. Really intrigued about what's going on in Norman, Oklahoma this weekend. I really liked Auburn, and I liked Oklahoma to bounce back this year and be an 8 or 9 win team, both of them. So they're kind of on pace for that. It's an interesting storyline with Jackson Arnold going back to Norman. John Mateer, he has just really taken the SEC by storm. So there's a lot of great matchups. You go into the Big Ten, Illinois versus, Indiana this weekend. I think that's a big one there. There could be a possible playoff, berth on the line between those two teams. So just a lot of great matchups. And look, don't sleep on, and Joseph, I know you guys know this, don't sleep on Texas Tech and Utah early game on Saturday.
We talked about that one. Yeah. You're exactly right.
I love Joey McGuire. I love him. They got it, that game, an early kick, too, in Salt Lake, Jake.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So a lot of great football to be had this weekend.
Awesome. Check them out on 104.5 ESPN Radio out in Jackson, Mississippi, The Drive. Jake, we'd love to have you on throughout the college season.
Hey, let me know, guys. I'll be here anytime. Great to be with you guys.
Awesome stuff, Jake.
Thank you, man.
That was
I
great.
catch you every time I drive.
Do you?
Every time I drop down 20. Every time I drop down 20 between 3 and 6. Well, yeah, because I have to go on Interstate 20 all the time. Yeah, because I'm in Monroe, and if I'm driving to Atlanta or driving to Birmingham or driving to Dallas, you're on I-20, and you go through Jackson, and you hear his show every day 3 to 6. You're going to catch his great SEC stuff, and
yeah, he does a great job. Jake does.
What we got next?
He does a great job. Jake does a fantastic job. I go on his show. He comes on mine. Just great insight from Lane Kiffin. Great insight from Ole Miss. He did bring up Oklahoma and Auburn, so let's talk about it. Yes. We'll be on tomorrow with the picks for the show. Maybe we'll get Mark Lawrence to come back on. He was great last time he was on the show. But I did break down, and I told you I flipped a couple of times. I originally was on Jackson Arnold, then I flipped to Mateer in Oklahoma. But here's the thing, Coach, that has me a little concerned, and I still haven't gotten a pick. But, break down the numbers on Mateer. Mateer's, playing lights out for the most part. But they're -5 in turnover margin, Oklahoma. And I understand that technically up until this point doesn't matter because they're 3-0. They beat Michigan, the game that matters. But when you're negative in turnover margin, at some point in a top 10, top 25 game, it comes to nab you. And Mateer's thrown 3 games down with an interception. I know he's the better quarterback in this matchup, but would you be concerned knowing that at least Auburn, from a defensive perspective, is opportunistic and this Oklahoma team is maybe just struggling with ball security a little bit?
Yeah, and if Auburn's had no turnovers, and I just got an email today. I made that statement. I think somebody said a backup late in the game fumbled a ball, but I didn't see that in their stat. They haven't turned they don't turn the ball over, and Jackson Arnold has not had a turnover or interception. They don't turn the ball over, and we go back to those 3rd and 4th downs that you talked about. They are very, very good. They're over 50% on 3rd downs. They're 5 for 5 on 4th down. So when you add that to their 3rd downs, they're sitting at about 60% as well. They control the football, and they hold other teams. Their rush defense is very good. The fact that they balance up, they mix up their run with their pass at Auburn, that gives you a chance to at least keep your quarterback from being pressured too much, because I promise you that Brent Venables, serving as the head coach and the defensive coordinator, will bring out some exotic blitzes for that quarterback, because he knows what the strengths and weaknesses of that quarterback is, because he played for him at Oklahoma, just like the quarterback knows a little bit about the weakness of one corner as opposed to another. But the bottom line is, Auburn is winning right now because they're not doing what they used. They're 9 for 9 in the red zone, scoring 8 touchdowns, 1 field goal, scoring every time they're in the red zone. They're very good at 3rd and 4th downs, and they can run the football and have a little balance. And I think that way, that that, and they're only a one score underdog in this game, a 6.5 right now. And yes, Oklahoma is expected to win, but it's a tight ball game. I told some people at Auburn, don't turn the ball. Just do what you've been doing and don't turn it over. And man, if you could just get one big play out of Coleman or Singleton, one deep ball completed can get you in that game on the winning side.
Yeah, it is. You're right. So that is the matchup and the breakdown when we see this. So you mentioned Jackson Arnold going up against his former team. Now you look at the stats. Auburn's averaging 242 on the ground, only 173 through the air. You know, as long as Jackson Arnold has had success running the football in the RPO game, they sustain drives, 52% third down offense, one of the better in all of FBS. So that's all the good for Auburn. But then we look at the good for Oklahoma, and let's not look at their offense because we know they're balanced, right?
Right.
Let's look at the defense, and that's where I think the game's going to be won or lost. So they're only giving up 84 passing yards per game. Okay, 84 passing yards, Coach. They haven't given up a passing touchdown. They have held opposing quarterbacks through 3 weeks, which includes Bryce Underwood and last week against Temple. 46% completion percentage. They're playing 17% on third down defense. Okay, so that is the matchup now. Okay, so we know Mateer is the more experienced guy. If the game is on the line, I feel more confident with Mateer being my quarterback than I do Jackson Arnold. Do we believe Auburn is going to have enough to exploit that secondary? Because you just said it. Can you give me one big play out of Singleton and Cam Coleman? I think they're going to need 4 or 5, Coach, outside of just one, because they can't play a lower scoring game and hope to get out of Dodge. They're going to have to at least score, I believe, 20 points to knock off Oklahoma.
Well, I mean, I consider 20 points a low-scoring game in my mind. I don't think that. I mean, 2 or 3 touchdowns in the low 20s is defensive. Nowadays, it's a defensive game as much as anything. No, I think they have to play, as I said, they've got to play error-free ball. They have an outstanding defense as well. And again, the thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is you have to have called plays. If I want a deep ball or an explosive play, I can call it. If I have a 78 play, I'll just say 78 Z takeoff. And now the quarterback has to throw the deep ball. Well, a lot of these quarterbacks, and I think that's what Hugh has done, he's not giving the quarterback a chance to make as many downfield throws because they're running the ball, they're controlling the ball. And then other than the game against, they had to outscore Baylor, they have not been in a game of any real consequence score-wise. So, no, I don't think he's got with John Mateer. I think John Mateer gives them the edge, but I'm not convinced they can't throw the ball pretty well with those receivers. If Hugh Freeze will take the reins off and will mix the pass in and the intermediate and deep ball pass with his other ones, I think you've got a chance to see a little more passing yards. But you know what? They're going to find a way to win. And if not passing too much is part of that, they'll be very happy to run the ball 2 out of 3 times and throw it just enough to keep them honest and try to keep it into a close ball game and win that game down the road. Because all those things you said about Oklahoma to me are true. And that 6.5 is a tough 6.5 to go with, but that's what's going to happen for Auburn to overcome it.
Yeah, that's what FanDuel has right now in this game. When you look at it, it's Oklahoma 6.5-point home favorites. They're 3-0 all time against the Auburn Tigers. Again, and I agree with you. 20 points is a lower scoring game, right? But when you think about the victory over Michigan, they win it 24-13.
That's
right. Michigan only got and the total on this game, Coach, when you just look at it now, I will say last year's total was 44.5. You want to know how I know? I bet it, and we just got over the 4. It was 45 points, 24-21. They had the pick 6 on Peyton Thorne, and then Michael Hawkins hit a couple of big plays over the top. This total is 47.5. So if I'm Auburn, I need to keep it under that total, right? Yeah. I can't let Mateer get to 30 because then I'm worried about my quarterback. I have to keep this. I have to keep this in the area of about 42, 43 points. If I score 20, maybe I steal it, 21-17 in that area. And that's the way you try to play it last week. So I'm going back and forth. I think I like Oklahoma. I think I like Oklahoma now. I just don't have enough confidence in Jackson Arnold. I've seen him too many big games. He wilts under pressure. He wilts, Coach.
And I still got a lot of clothes in my closet that are orange and blue. I got to be careful sometimes. Sometimes my heart makes me think of what I would like to have happen because, and I sit there and think, I think Oklahoma's going to win, but I got 6.5 points, and that would mean at least you got the bet, but it's going to be tight. Right now I'm leaning just on Auburn playing within a 3 to 5 points. But Oklahoma's still winning the ball game, and within 3 to 5 points, that Auburn will stay within that distance.
Right. So let me give you the biggest line mover in the conference, in the SEC. And so on Sunday night on FanDuel, when this line opened up, it was Missouri, a 13.5 point favorite. We look now, Wednesday night, Eastern time, almost 9 o'clock. Missouri down to a 9.5 point favorite. Now, I will say this. I read the press release for Lenore Sellers with Shane Beamer. Lenore Sellers was in concussion protocol. He did not practice Monday. He did not practice Tuesday. Shane Beamer, late Tuesday, said he doesn't care who it is. They have rules that if you don't practice on Wednesday, you're out. Doesn't matter if you're a starter, quarterback,
a lot of us
whatever.
have that one. Yeah,
right.
A lot of us have that rule.
So now I look at the spread, and I haven't seen a report, but the line is telling me everything I need to know. I have Missouri now down to a 9.5 point favorite. We're down 4 points from Sunday night. That, in my opinion, means Lenore Sellers practiced today in Columbia.
Yeah, that would suggest that to me too. Now I will say this, Lenore, we all have those rules, but if I've got a 3-year starter at quarterback or a guy that's been there 4 years and has never missed a play, I'm going to make an exception every now and then to that rule. There's always got to.
Johnny, I know we have rules here, but Lenoris is basically a Heisman Trophy candidate, and he's giving us the best shot to win on Saturday, right?
And all I know is, as my dad told me, you don't play that guy, and it hurts those other 21 players that are on the field on our team too, because he can help us win. But you got to use your head. The concussion protocol, very important. He is right about that. If you don't pass it, you can't practice. You can't play no matter the kid may beg you to play. But if he can't pass his protocol, he gets no choice. But with the line going down like that, as I would have thought they would hold him. They would hold him out, or he would hold out, only because he's a big time player. He can't afford to have any head problems down the road. His future is too big. I thought it would lean the other direction, but with that point total going down, now I'll say this: now with him playing the way Missouri is playing, and the way the offense at South Carolina has played before he got hurt, I don't know that that's going to make a difference. Now, with the line going down, I'm not sure him playing is going to make me jump on South Carolina. I did that that was my lock last week, South Carolina. And again, he got hurt in the second quarter, and we couldn't get a fair picture of the thing. It looked like it just took the wind out of everybody's sail with South Carolina. When they lost him, and they couldn't get anything out of their backup. It's like so many teams. Yeah, like so many teams, you may have a backup, but that's way down when it comes to talent level. And with Lenoris, that goes way down. So that, but I don't care whether he plays or not. Missouri's playing pretty dang good. That quarterback they got from Penn State, the running back from ULM is like the second leading rusher in the country. He's 400 and something yards already this season. Yeah, the one they got from ULM. They didn't play for me. He came in as a true freshman last year, and the same thing that happened to me happened to them there last year. Every good player I ever had at ULM transferred out in the portal because they could go to a bigger school. But Missouri, I'm gonna tell you something. They whopped a Kansas team that's well coached and beat them pretty handily. And I'm not sure I'm going against Missouri whether Lenoris plays or not.
Well, Coach, ding, ding. It could be one of my best bets for this weekend. I like South Carolina. Now, hear me out, okay? I agree with everything you said about how they're playing, because I agree. This offense is inconsistent. this offense is pathetic out of South Carolina. They're averaging 110 rushing yards per game, 193 through the air. A bigger concern happens to be third down offense. A third down efficiency, 30%. They struggled against Vatek. They struggled against Vanderbilt. You can't have that, especially if you're going on the road to a very high caliber, efficient offense in Bo Perbula and Missouri. Now, Missouri's 3-0. They've dominated Kansas. They dominated last week. They've won. They beat Louisiana, I think, 62-7. They crushed them 60-10. They've won the last two games at home against Louisiana and KU by 26.5 points per game. But we always talk about series. This series traditionally is close. Last year was a 34-30 game. 4 of the last 7 have been decided by 7 or less. Here's the thing. If Luke Doty does start, and I know he didn't play well last week, but he's a senior. We're not throwing in a redshirt freshman, a sophomore, a senior. To me, on the road, at least we could get something out of the guy, right? Like, as a coach, when you have a senior quarterback that has played, even if in backup, you feel more confident opening up the playbook with Luke Doty than you would a freshman or a redshirt sophomore, right?
Yeah, I mean, because a senior usually will go in there and we don't lose what we've already got. But it looked to me last week that they looked to him to give them some explosiveness, to give them something to catch up and to move ahead. I'm not sure he has that. He's got the ability to act, to play maturely with great leadership, not make mistakes, manage the offense, but dynamic enough to have them beat a team with things that he does on an individual basis, like scramble for a big play, make the downfield throw. I don't know if he's got all that. If he's in there just to take a team that's winning or a team that's favored and say, okay, let's make sure I make everybody else look good, that's what he's going to have to do. He's going to have to make everybody else look good, get the right guy the ball, make a good decision based on the play that's called. And who knows? That means, those are the best stories of all, when the senior that never had a chance to play comes in and turns it around for South Carolina. It only takes one big game, and who knows what might happen then.
You got that right. So we'll see exactly what transpires. Some other games of note that we're going to go and we're going to be on tomorrow. We'll dive into all these. Arkansas, Memphis, very intriguing to me. Memphis wins. They could be that group of 5 team because this is a great offense in Arkansas. This total to me, I would lean to the under just because Memphis plays defense. They shut down Troy last week. They got to contain Taylor Green. But you know what? I might take this. I might take the 7.5 with Memphis. Another one is, were you impressed with Wisconsin? I know they stunk in Tuscaloosa, but I felt like the interior lines went toe-to-toe for a couple of quarters. I think they can handle Maryland this week. What do you think about Wisconsin from watching them play?
I just didn't get to see enough of them yesterday. Alabama jumped out and just pulled away at the end. I know they're favored in this football game, but I'm not quite ready because I haven't seen enough of Maryland. I need to take a day or so to take a look at that one. We'll talk about that one tomorrow for me, because right now I'm just thinking from the scores that I've seen. I don't want to base that on something that I've seen and not something that I've studied and watched a lot of film on. But I'm not ready to say right now that Wisconsin is going to get Maryland by that score. What's the line on that game?
It's 10.5, and Billy Edwards might play Wisconsin. And here's the thing: Billy Edwards transferred from Maryland, so they held him out. He's going up against his former team. Luke Fickell. I told you, and that's the thing, Coach. It drives me nuts. And I told you this. I understand you're getting smashed by Alabama. I get that. But you're down 24 points. You have the ball with 4 minutes left, and he's conceding victory by running the football out. And the mentality is, well, we're not going to win. I get that. But you got to tell me, when head coaches sit up there and they talk to the team, right? Fight for 60 minutes. Fight for, right? As a coach, you got to buy into that mentality. If you don't want to risk the starters, that's all well and good. Then take the starters out with 4 minutes left. Put in the backups, because at the end of the day, you still have to develop the backups. They have to get experience. Throw the football all over the yard. I don't understand that mentality of just running the football out to get out of Dodge. What purpose does that serve? It drives me absolutely crazy.
No, to me, I think there's a time that you put your backups in, but man, you got to continue to try to get the most out of them you can. And you know what? I never was. If I got beat by 4, if I went for it on 4th down with the minutes to go because one of my backups to have a chance to make something good happen, it didn't bother me that much. If that team was going to beat me, it wasn't going to bother me if they got a couple more because I took chances. So I'm with you on that one. I think you might put your backups in when it's time to get them some work to help your football team. But let them play. Let them go out there and try to score, and don't just pound it up the middle. Don't call timeouts. Take your time between plays and get the game over with. Because that's what I think players can watch the head coach and see that happen like they did in that ball game.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this. The two teams that had monumental upsets last week, well, I don't want to say monumental for Vanderbilt. They were 3.5-point dogs,
Right.
But the perception is, to go into Williams-Brice and win it by 24, that's huge. And Georgia Tech, they're both laying huge numbers. Georgia State is catching 27.5 against Vanderbilt, and Temple, that just got smashed against Oklahoma, is catching basically 23.5 against Georgia Tech. I like Temple this weekend. I know, call me crazy, but coming off an emotional win, I think it's a perfect letdown spot for Brent Key and Haynes King. How hard is it to get these kids up after a monumental win like that in today's game?
Well, it's hard because you don't get your kids up every week. They don't play at the optimum emotional level every week. That's why I told my coaches, make sure we have practices that are just as hard after a big win as against loss, that we are fundamentally sound, that we block and tackle, we know our assignments, we're mentally ready to play, and then it's up to the players to go in there and play, because they're not always going to play up to their maximum, because that's not the way it happens. You see sprinters run a race faster at one time than another because it's a different mental aspect that sometimes. Football's the same way. Now, I don't have a Georgia, I'm not a Temple. I don't know enough about Temple, to be honest with you. I don't think they can hang at all with this football team. But we'll see on Saturday.
Yeah, I might take the 23.5. I'm telling you, I know. I watched Temple play against Oklahoma. They moved the football a little bit. It's just to me a spot where I'm willing. Hey, Georgia Tech doesn't have to lose. They have to win by 24, and I just think that's a tough ask, especially with a conference game in week number 5. So we'll talk about it. We'll be back tomorrow night. We'll have all of our picks for the weekend. We'll break down, or we'll get into the Indiana-Illinois game tomorrow. I'll even throw a Big 12. We didn't talk about this. Baylor and Sawyer Robertson taking on Arizona State. You know I love that Baylor team. We'll break down that game tomorrow night on We're Gonna Run It.
Texas Tech and Utah.
Yeah, we'll talk about
Indiana,
all of them.
Illinois, maybe. Yep.
Yeah, we'll have all
there.
the top 25 games. I'll give my picks. You give your picks. We'll get the fans locked and loaded. Listen to We're Gonna Run It, sponsored by FanDuel. We're on 3 days a week. You can find us on Apple and Spotify. We'll see you tomorrow. For Coach Bowden, I'm Joe Lisi. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow.
So long now.